What kind of pros would you say in addition to that?
Oh, no, those are the ones I wrote down.
Well, I use those.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Card and Compliance. Hey, Donna.
Hello, David.
So, as we're recording this, guess who I get to hang out with next week?
Me!
Aren't you excited?
No!
So yeah, for some people that are maybe new listeners, they don't realize that we actually aren't sitting together when we record. I'm up here in the great state of South Carolina, you in the Bulldog state.
That's right. Go Dogs.
So we don't get in each other's presence very often, which is probably a good thing.
Some relationships were meant to be long distance, and ours is one.
Yeah, when we were together at Hymns for that whole week, that was very interesting. I think it scared us because we were like, wow, we actually are too much alike.
We did a lot of finishing each other's sentences, which was scary, and I don't want to live that nightmare again. No, but we're looking forward to the boot camp, and by the time this comes out, it'll be
all gone.
Oh, yeah, it'll be all done. In fact, this comes out Friday of Labor Day weekend, so everybody have a great holiday weekend.
Oh, long weekend.
Yeah, so hopefully you'll be listening to us. I'll be in Key West.
Oh, guess what we got coming up Monday?
The eclipse.
Yeah, the big solar eclipse. So all you optometrists, get ready for Tuesday.
Not really. And there's faulty, even the people that have glasses may not, work. So.
Yeah, I got some of those faulty glasses.
Yeah.
I got an email says don't use them. Throw them away. We'll give you your money back. So yeah. Now I got to figure out something to do with them. So good thing Halloween's coming up. I'm going to dress like an eclipse viewer.
There you go. Or Devo.
Hey.
There you go. For those of you that know what that is, hoot, hoot. Get the funky hats. But we do have so much going on that I don't even know if I'll get to go out and see the eclipse. I'm going to carry my little glasses around with me so I can run outside.
They said don't look directly at it, so I'm just going to use a mirror.
Oh, gosh. Please help us. Please. See, this is why I'm glad I don't live there. All right. Let's proceed with the day.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the question a lot of us have, right up under the meaning of life is, should you use a local server, a data center server, or a cloud server? And we're going to discuss that today.
We're going to explain the difference in layman's terms.
Yeah.
This is not a technical discussion.
Yeah.
So don't turn it off right now.
Yeah, if you're not a tech person, we're not going to talk tech. If you are a tech person, you're probably going to need to know how to speak like we're going to be speaking today to people so you don't get that glassy-eyed look that you typically get when you try to explain the difference in these things.
Yeah, so, use what we're doing or make it better. But it's time for us to review it because of stuff in the news. So we'll hit all of that all in just a second.
Yeah. So I will be, so just in case anybody wants to come and find me in Washington, D.C. in September 16th and 17th at the Unconvention IT conference up that way. And I've had a few people already email me and said they're going to be there. So I'm looking forward to meeting some additional listeners and peoples. And then and you're going to be in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
Yeah.
September 22nd.
Yeah.
Georgia HFMA Care Forum.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about compliance.
And then in October, you will be in Kennesaw, Georgia for the North Metro MGMA.
Yes.
And then you get a little bit of break. And November the 8th, you'll be in Reynolds Plantation at Lake Oconee, Georgia.
The Georgia HFMA Fall Institute.
So that's interesting that they're going to have you in September, then again in November.
Well, it's two different kinds of things. One is focused on compliance, and the other is kind of their general fall meeting, state organization meeting. So forum versus institute kind of thing.
You need to be an institute for sure. And then in November, you have Callaway Gardens, UOB, Georgia, again, Georgia. The Georgia Association of Orthopedic Executives. So that ought to be fun. And so did you ever get anywhere with booking into the 2018 season? We talked about that.
Actually, yeah. Well, we haven't. We're talking to folks doing some national stuff in 2018. We'll be talking about that a little bit more, but we haven't formalized anything just yet. But we're talking, and the speaker. And by the way, you can go to donnagrindle.com now.
What?
Get information on having me as a speaker, a featured speaker at your events. People say, "Can you do that in a keynote?" Absolutely. It's
cool.
What I do now.
You can go to davidsims.com too, but it's not me. But it is kind of creepy if you want to check it out. I've tried to get the person to sell me the website, but they won't respond to my email.
Yeah, David Sims says, I'm not talking to anybody named David Sims.
Yeah, he's not from the States, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of creepy website. But if I'll throw this out there, if anybody's interested in having a HIPAA boot camp in their area, I haven't said anything to Donna about this, so she's probably got her eyes wide open. But let us know. Let us know if you're interested in hosting one or having one in your area, and we'll talk about it.
Indeed.
Not saying it'll happen, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm playing with some ideas, going, taking the show on the road stuff. So, but let's get to where we go here. All
right. So the question is that, whether your server, if you have a server, should it be there in your business? Should it be hosted in a data center, or should it be in the cloud? And of course, we'll have to just kind of talk about what those even are and what they mean. But the reason why we're discussing this is because of some things that have come up recently in the news.
Yes, there was a notice published by Surgical Dermatology Group in Birmingham, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
They published a notice this week that they had their cloud hosting and server management provider, TechLinks, had a security breach in their Birmingham facility where their servers are hosted, and they had an investigation and all those kind of things. An external hacker had gained access to the server, possibly as far back as March 23rd, 2017.
Mm-hmm.
They did, block all unauthorized access from the hacker May 1st. That monitoring from April 22nd through May 1st showed that no malicious activity was happening. So then they just shut it down, but they found, that the path was there, we'll say. And, they're dealing with law enforcement and all of that good stuff. But nonetheless, a unauthorized third party was roaming around on their server. So there was an infiltration. And because they use this company called TechLinks, then that is a business associate who was providing server hosting and management services to them. So then that TechLinks company, and they're like, I think Knoxville, Chattanooga, Birmingham, they kind of have this angle line, almost like the storm's coming down, they know that line is perfect between those three.
Mm-hmm. And
they published a statement that said the infrastructure was not breached, and there's no evidence that any files were exfiltrated or viewed during the attack. It combined two common cyber attack strategies: brute force attack on an external customer server and ransomware. So I'm not quite sure, we're not getting a lot of the details about whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
They do say, brute force and how that works, and ransomware, blah, blah, blah. The incident targeted a small number of our customers, and we are proud of our technical team who identified the threat and remediated the situation quickly. There's no guaranteed protection for internet-based systems.
True.
We are continually focused on ways to improve threat detection and response. So that means that, I don't know if that was, they said it only affected very specific customers, and that may have been the only ones that were medical that had to follow HIPAA.
Right.
So that may be why there's only that one. But this is when you usually get those discussions and somebody will say, that's why we should keep our server at our office.
Yeah.
Because you can't.
Heard that one before.
Mm-hmm. I want the server at my office. It's cheaper.
Heard that one before.
Yeah.
But just like everything else that you do, I mean, there's pros and cons.
Yep.
So, we're going to cover the pros and cons and explain what those different options are for where you can host your server. And from a compliance and security standpoint, what do you got to worry about?
Yep.
So, but again, this is not digging into technical details. We're talking about it from a high level discussion that is, more or less from a manager's how you would approach it from a business decision, not from a technical decision. Because there may be technical issues involved here that could weigh your decision one way or another due to technical requirements of whatever you're doing.
Yeah, because we're not going to get into saying which one is better than the other because it really depends. It's a fact-specific determination.
I know. That should be our tagline. HIPAA, it's a fact-specific determination.
So, if you're looking to hear this and go, okay, now I know exactly which one I want because they recommended it, I don't think we're going to be doing that. But what we are going to be doing is giving you the information so that you can make a more intelligent decision about which direction you want to go with it.
Yeah, so it's about making your decisions. And if you already have decided, we're going to tell you the things you better be worried about if this is the way you're currently doing it. So, and we're off.
Yeah. So I guess we should cover some general things first.
Yeah.
That's not specific to one of the three options. One thing that comes to mind for me to consider is you may want to reach out to your insurance provider and make sure that you're covered for whichever of the three you choose. So if you have the data on a local server, your insurance might cover that. If you have it somewhere else, it might not cover that, or you may have to have an addendum on your insurance to cover that. So you probably need to know before you move that data somewhere else or have it in the cloud or whatever, how that's going to affect your insurance.
Well, and they may ask you different questions on applications and consider different things. And so, yeah, it's a very important thing no matter what you decide. Make sure you understand if your choices across these three make any difference in your coverage.
Mm-hmm. And then you also have to think about the fact that in-house would probably eliminate a business associate, whereas having it in the cloud or in the data center, you've taken on a new business associate, and how that's going to look as far as your risk analysis, as well as what happens when there's incidents and breaches and how that's going to happen.
Yeah, so there's a lot of pieces and parts that are moving, but first let's start with just trying to define the difference. And I came up with, I try to come in with layman terms of, what it really means when you're going to do one of the three. So if you're going to have a local server, that means I'm going to build my own house on my own property that I own, and I'm going to put my house on it and put all my furniture in it. I'm going to have my own server. So I'm maintaining everything that has to do about that house and all of the security and keeping the heat and air and phone going. I am completely responsible for everything that happens.
Right.
That is a local server.
Yeah. You can reach out and touch it.
Now, if you use a data center, which there's in-between areas, and this is kind of the in-between. It's a little bit of both. What you do is you essentially lease a cage in a big data center, and you put your server in there. So that's kind of like I build a house, but it's in a gated community, so it has a lot of amenities that I have access to. There may be golf courses and swimming pools and clubhouses, and there's security because it's gated, and there's a litany of things that I get in exchange for giving up complete control of the property and what I can do with my building. In exchange for that, I'm going to get all of these other things. I still build my house. I just have to work within the limitations of what is there, but then I can tie into all of the security and the amenities and the other things that are there.
Right.
So inside the house, it's still my furniture. I'm responsible. I can keep it empty. But, outside of it, it is, other people in the community can't just get a key and walk in. It is still my place. But I am buying and giving up a little bit of control to add a whole bunch of really cool things.
Right.
And then, thank you for agreeing, David.
All right.
And then we get to the cloud server. And the cloud server is where essentially they're building virtual servers, and everybody starts talking about this, and I don't want to go down that technical wheel. But think of a high-rise condo building, and you have all kinds of options that it's fully furnished. So everything about the building itself is being taken care of, and you have a maintenance crew that can come in and they can work in your condo, but it's your property and you are paying for that property, and you have the right to move and all those kind of things, but you're in this condo complex and you don't necessarily own the property. You are subletting, you're doing whatever, but you are in a giant luxury condo is what it is. So somebody else is, one of the things I always like about renting or leasing something is the ability to call maintenance when something goes wrong, instead of me standing here going, we just tried to change a faucet out in the kitchen. One would think it was pretty easy until the faucet was, the nuts and bolts were all rusted together so tightly that when I gave up and called the plumber, I did have a little bit of pride when he couldn't get it off either. He ended up sawing it off.
Oh, wow.
I know, the top and the bottom, to beat the thing through. So I was like, okay, I don't feel so bad. But that's what homeowners go through. Whereas, I could just call hey, this thing's leaking, come fix it. Mm-hmm. And somebody shows up and they're like, if you're there, they knock on the door. If you're not there, they can still come in. They take care of everything. They'll fix it, but they give you a certain amount of privacy and control.
Right.
So there you go. That's it. Where do you want to have your server live? Now, what's the pros and cons of each of them?
Yeah. Well, most people think if it's local, then they have full control and, they're more secure because nobody's going to hack little old me.
Oh, yeah, there's that one, right?
Right. But the pros of that, yes, you do have complete control. Another pro is that you don't have to pay a monthly fee like you would if you were in a data center or in the cloud. And it's fast because the data is not having to move through the internet and be connected to all these other endpoints and all this hoops and stuff. We're not hoops and hops and everything else. It's just right there in the business. So it's faster to do it that way. And what kind of pros would you say in addition to that?
Oh, no, those are the ones I wrote down.
Well, I use those.
No, but a lot of people find it because then there are cases where, there's certain things that you won't have technical capabilities to do unless you have the server yourself. And that goes into the areas that we're not really uncover, but there are cases where there's something, like with, even our web server that's hosted and okay, well, I'm getting this alert that this needs to happen. Well, we're not doing that right now. Yeah. Because that's not going to fit into the infrastructure the way that we're doing it. So there are those kinds of limitations that you get knocked out of the way, so that you do have that control to say, when is it going to be available, and how am I going to do the backup and the maintenance and all of those things. So you get the ability to be, very involved in the management, we'll say. And that can be both a gift and a curse, because that leads into the cons. And these, I say them as cons, but they're not really, because, you could take these to be the pros, but these are the things that these are the caveats that you need to make sure you're doing. And if you're not going to do these, you shouldn't do a local server.
Yep.
So that doesn't mean they're bad. It just means this is responsibilities you are taking on and you must do when you do these. So,
so if you want complete control,
you have complete control. So that means that you are responsible for the physical security of the device, and not just like, oh, nobody's going to pick that up and take it away, but is somebody going to swing by and stick a little USB drive in it that's going to do some key logging?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Is it going to get vandalized and broken to pieces? That could happen. We have a lot of those cases that occur, and you see them in the news. So the physical access to it, are you going to let everybody in the office have access to that device?
Yep.
So
cleaning crew. I mean, a lot of those cleaning people come in after hours, and they have complete access to everything. Yeah, it doesn't matter that they can't log in. They don't need to log in.
That's right. You don't need to. So, it's like when we talked about Alexa, and it's okay, if I have physical access to the device, I can hack it. That's all I need.
Mm-hmm.
So you're giving people access, and it is part of your HIPAA requirements is to limit the physical access to your devices to only what needs to be done. And also, that physical security would include making sure that the device can run. So we've had people who put in a nice little closet, and they said, we're going to have a locked room. We're going to put the server in it. But it has no airflow.
Yeah.
And these things get really, really hot.
Mm-hmm.
So then they would overheat. And guess what happens when they overheat?
They don't like it.
They turn off. They go, I am done with you. I am not going to blow up. I'm turning off.
Mm-hmm.
So they have these little heat sensors in it. So that physical security, you've got to think it through. You can't just say, we'll put it in this locked room. And some of my favorite are show me your server, and they take you down the hall, and there's a little, those little folding closet doors.
Yeah.
And you know exactly what I'm talking about. They slide that back, and there sits the server. Mm-hmm. It's got ventilation.
Yeah, perfect. It's perfect.
And you wouldn't think of opening that door. That's kind of the theory. But still, don't know if it meets the requirements.
Yeah, that's like when people put workstations in the desk, that has the door, so they can slide it into that little door area and close it and lock it.
Yeah.
Like, this is really bad for computers. I don't know who created the desk, but they don't know a whole lot about computers.
Yeah, unless it's completely open on the back, which then kind of defeats the lock purpose. It's kind of not helpful. But that is, you have to keep in mind you're going to have to physically secure it while maintaining the levels of temperature and access, because you can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to put it in a room it's a small room, and I'll put a fan in there, and I'll get all of that. But now I can't get to it to work on it, or we need to also have in there maybe you need a monitor where it is. Maybe you got to have your backup batteries and all of those kind of things. So you got to figure out all that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. So there's piece number one. Then you got to connect it to everything. So you're responsible for making sure that it is properly connected and secured on your networks, as well as all of the interfaces that are going to take place on that device. So, everybody's all about being able to quickly exchange information.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it when we'll go in and do our risk analysis, and we'll say, okay, well, what are the interfaces you have? What do you mean? All the different stuff. Well, we don't really do that. Well, do you transmit claims? Yeah. Does it come from your server to somewhere else? Yeah, that's an interface. Let's start there. Do you get stuff from the lab? Do you get, does your fax go automatically into your, so these are ways that PHI move, and you got to document that and say, how is it secured?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that we put on our list there. And often, what was it? How many times have we talked about RDP?
A few times. Yeah.
Please turn it off. Even David Benton, he was like, turn it off.
Yeah. I actually just had a meeting with a prospect a couple weeks ago, and the EHR platform they uses RDP.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Don't expose it. Don't expose it to the internet, at least, and there's several of them that do, that's just the way they're doing it. And it's just totally not secure. So, but these are all the other things that you got to worry about. And, who has access to it. Like, you've got to manage the Active Directory and the users and give everybody the right security, which you have to do for, most any server. You're going to have to do that, but you're in charge of it. There's not somebody else helping you in most cases, or you've also got to control who you're going to let do that for you.
Yeah.
And that's where your MSPs come in. Like, oh, that's what David does.
Yeah, that's a big problem, though. At least we see it as a big problem, because when I go to a client and they have 10 employees and there's 30 users, and I'm like, what's going on? Oh, these are the people that don't work here anymore and haven't been here for 10 years. Oh, I got it. They probably should have came out of there a long time ago.
Or you'll have you have one person that knows the admin password.
Mm-hmm.
And then they quit, or they get hit by a bus, or, they work for another company and then they leave the other company. And not only do you not know, but the other company doesn't know.
Yeah. Or worse yet, the IT company is the only one that knows the admin password.
Mm-hmm.
And you decided to fire them before you got that information.
Yeah. So, but that can happen in a lot of ways. But when the device is not right there with you, you automatically think of different things. So.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have all of that. You also got to keep all of the software up to date, the operating system, all of the apps that are on it. And we're not just talking your EHR, we're talking
Everything.
Everything.
Yeah, and that's what we call patching. So if you ever hear anybody talk about patching, then that's
patch management.
Yeah, patch management. It's basically we're just updating software and putting updates, whatever comes out, security updates. Somewhere along the line it changed from updates to patching.
Yeah, I know.
And the thing you have to know is you can't just blindly do them. And you got to know that the system will need to be rebooted at times. So you got to manage when that's going to happen.
And sometimes an update will break stuff.
Yeah. And then you got to figure out what that is. And you've got to figure out if you're going to roll it back and all this. So often that's why people outsource server management to an MSP, because a lot of this stuff starts adding up. So now you're paying monthly to have the device managed, the maintenance on the hardware.
Yeah. Yep.
You got to make sure you pay for maintenance on that hardware. Oh, and make sure you're getting the licensing right on the software.
Whew, that's tough for us sometimes.
Yeah, the number of times people have a hard time. I mean, it's one of the craziest things, just trying to figure out how to license a server, the operating system. I am so happy I don't have to do that.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Microsoft is not really a software company. They're a licensing company. Just like McDonald's is not really a restaurant. I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but they're a real estate company.
Well, but you're right. I mean, somebody's got to control that for you. So you're either going to do that yourself, or you're going to outsource it to somebody. And by the way, all of the people that just, I'm going to get my server through my EHR. Another confusion.
Yeah.
You need to be very, very clear who's handling what, because we've gone in before and everybody assumes everybody else is doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start asking the questions and getting documentation on it. And they're like, no, you're handling that. No, you're handling that.
Yeah. That usually happens when data gets lost.
I know. Thankfully, we try to ask the question before then, but it's definitely the case. And then you have, the hard drive goes out. All right. Well, you got to make sure you have RAID services turned on, and what is the speed of your hard drives and those kind of things, so that you know what's going to happen if a drive starts going down, or you get a fan that goes out, or any number of those kind of regular maintenance things where you have to go in and do it. And what else we got here?
Well, another thing to consider, and we've talked about this a long time ago, but even if you have your data backed up on that server, how are you going to get that data back? Even though it's a local server, sometimes you don't have a local backup. So you have to think about that and how long it's going to take to get it. I had a client one time that once we started doing an assessment, we figured out it was going to take him 31 days to get his download or get his data back.
And that was the only plan, right?
Yeah. Is that, because the way he had it set up, you usually had to download everything. It was going to take 31 days to get everything downloaded. And then we had to actually make it start working. So not a good plan.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing to do with the backup. And we've been in before, and you go in, oh, well, here's our server room. And first of all, it's just wires and stuff stacked everywhere with not even a door. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's start here. No physical security whatsoever. It's a problem if you want to actually maintain it. And another thing would be that the backup, when I say, okay, show me, your backup, where everything, how it all works. Well, you see this external hard drive right here. We unplug that every morning, and we take it over here to this filing cabinet, and we unlock the filing cabinet. We put that one in. We take the next one out, and we plug it right in here. Got a local backup. But what happens if the building burns down? What happens if, it's like there's a flood, any number of things. You got all of your backup and your data in one tiny room. Yep. So it's not a plan.
Before we move on to the data center, though, I do want to say that when people think about you don't have to pay monthly for it, that's not really true. Because if you have a server on site, there are things you have to pay for the monthly maintenance, and like Donna said, having the IT provider come in. Also, you have a lot of things that are sucking up power, especially if you got multiple servers. So there are power consumption things that are costing you money. So you're not getting away from paying something monthly. So make sure you think about that.
Well, and you really should be putting away money. I mean, it needs to be budgeted that you're going to do certain amounts of maintenance that we talked about, but you also have to plan for the upgrades.
Yeah, and replacement.
For the software and the hardware and replacement. I mean, I know people that will squeeze every moment of life out of a server.
Everybody will.
But I'm talking, I know a server that's been running 11 years. It's not a Windows server, but it's been running 11 years. There's a little bit of, it's a Mac Daddy one, but come on now. Come on. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Come on. Come on, man.
So let's move on to the gated community.
All right. So I don't know if you've ever been into one of these data centers, but it reminded me about being in the chicken house with all those cages. So, well, because they got the small cages, and then they got the bigger cages. So you can see like the big companies, you go over there in the banks and stuff, and they'll have like this entire big cage, it's like WWE fighting cage or something.
Yeah, and, with the raised floor and all that stuff.
And then inside that cage is a whole bunch of computers and stuff. And so you got to go through so many layers of security even to get in there. And then you got to still get in to this completely, enclosed cage to get into their computer. So you can have those big areas, or you can just have your own little mini cage. Mm-hmm. So it's depending on, do you want the penthouse? It's you pick and choose what kind of home you want in your gated community. Right. So, and that of course has to do with the size of the servers and the number that you need. But all of the internet connectivity, all of the power, the generators that they have out back, you wouldn't believe the size of those things, so that they can keep those things up and running. And then your server is up and running all the time. You just have to worry about the physical device inside the cage. So they secure it. You have to go through all these layers to get to the cage. And then you have to have the key to unlock it. And then once inside, now everything in there is your responsibility.
Yep.
So it's very cool when you go in there and you're a nerd like me, though. So the good news is you still have control of the hardware. You're still responsible for a lot of things, but you've outsourced that physical access controls. You've outsourced the power requirements that David mentioned, all of the bandwidth and the network connectivity and all of that. You pay a monthly fee, but it's kind of offset by some of those other costs that you'll pay anyway, that you get rid of in your office. Now you still have to manage, the users and who has access to it, and you have to keep the software up to date and the apps because they're not doing anything but housing it. So the maintenance on the hardware and all of those kind of things. And if you need something repaired, now the good news is if you need a hard drive put in, you get the hard drive over there. They've got people that work in those centers and some of them will have their people go in and physically put a hard drive in for you, but it's not that's always part of the service. So you have to ask.
Right. So another caveat to dealing with a data center too, it's like we had on a recent podcast, is that you have to realize that they now become a business associate.
Right. So you've got to vet them and review them. You got to add that process into everything, because even then you may still have an MSP who's managing the server, but they're not having to do all the hard stuff. So you'll have that business associate, and then you'll add another business associate that gives you the building and the housing, if you will. So that's like you can think of that as your home association fees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you have the home association fees that you're paying, and everything's included in there. But, you get something for it, but you're paying it all the time.
Just make sure you keep a grass cut around your server. No servers up on blocks.
Don't be putting those, we're not slumming here. It's a fancy one. But you do have to manage your backup. But they don't necessarily, to them, it's like once it's inside the cage, do you have power? Do you have internet access? Is it up and running? We're done.
Mm-hmm.
So you still got to budget for all of those things that we talked about of, keeping the operating system up to date, having a backup plan. But it does help because you've now outsourced, if you will, some of the disaster recovery, because you're no longer worried about if it floods at your office. They're responsible, and those guys spend thousands and thousands of dollars making sure how sprinkler systems go, and they're not, they have foam systems to put out fires and all of these kind of things that you don't necessarily think about in your own office, because, we'll say, okay, well, what's going to happen if fire's on? Well, we have a sprinkler system, and there's a sprinkler right above the server, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
Helpful.
Yeah.
Fire will be out. So will the server.
Mm-hmm.
So those guys put a lot of work into most of the protections. But can they prevent a tornado from hitting it? No. Can they put all kinds of reinforcement in so that if it is hit, it should survive? Yeah. So that's what you can count on, and you can document that as part of your disaster recovery. But the maintenance and the upgrade of the device in the cage, you still got to deal with, and you better be vetting those folks, because if they do have a key to your cage, and even if they don't, people pick locks. I'm sorry. But a lot of these folks go way out of their way for security. And so that's another reason it's fun for me to go visit them.
You just like drill it on the floor.
No, just, I always like to know. I just, this is so exciting. It doesn't stress me out at all. That, I feel pretty comfortable that what's in here, no outside person can just easily waltz in and go get any server that I have there. Now, my question is, how can you make sure that an insider doesn't, get it? Because we talk about insiders being as much of a problem. Now, the good news is in these data centers, there's not tons of people. There are very, very few people required to manage it, but they are very skilled people that they're looking at all of the bandwidth and the traffic and stuff, but not, they're not grabbing the traffic, but they're making sure, that the bandwidth in being sucked up and all these kind of things. So,
yeah. And then that brings us to our third option. We're going to stick your head in the cloud for a second. And talk about a cloud server. Now, for those of you who don't know, when they talk about the cloud, they're basically just meaning it's a server that's somewhere else. And sometimes they're tied together with other servers, and they call that the cloud. So it's not some mysterious place. When you follow the yellow brick road, you'll get to the cloud.
Yeah, and there's a little bitty David sitting behind there making it talk.
Pay no attention to the David behind the curtain.
But it's like you lease a place in a high-rise condo, and everything that you put in there is yours, but it also comes with a lot of potentially furniture and those kind of things. And they have the ability to expand and contract and all of that kind of stuff. So you're outsourcing everything. They keep up with the operating system. They keep up with the apps to some extent, not completely. All the physical controls, the network controls on the server. Most of the time, they're going to worry about disaster recovery and business continuity for you. It'll be a part of your deal. And I wrote this down, and then I realized now there's a technical term. You have the ability to spin up another server if you need it.
Yeah, spin is a technical term for sure.
Yeah, but basically, because of the way that it's configured, we got a whole bunch of new users for our. We have a portal where you can go do video training that we have, and we signed up it like doubled in a couple of months because we got a big client. So I was able to go to our hosting company and say, I know I'm about to get hit with a lot of users. And so they're like, okay, well, let's do this, this, and this. And 20 minutes later, I had upgraded everything. It was all done. I didn't, I'm just paying a little extra. So you pay for what you use. And so we're paying extra, but I'm only paying for it because I need it and I will use it and I've sold it.
Yeah. And if you don't need it, 2 months from now, then you can contract back down. That's which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And so I can reduce my cost. And, we see that a lot where somebody will spec a server because you don't know what may happen a year from now. And you buy these servers to last 5 or 6 years. You don't know what may happen. Okay, well, now suddenly we're going to merge or we're going to split. So the server is either way too big or way too small. And you're going to invest more in those things. And you're going to invest more. And once you buy a big one, you don't get to take it back down. and increasing one because you bought it at a certain size, it's not designed to go that big. So you're going to have to get a new one and replace the one you have or add another one, and that'll add to your management. So I personally love that ability to say, you know what, I need some memory, I need some storage. Oh, I want to back up this third way because, I got 3 backups. And, you get tech support. There's a certain amount of tech support they can do. They don't necessarily know your EHR, but they can do a certain amount of tech support and stuff.
Yeah. Another thing to consider too is that sometimes you have to have more than one server depending on the roles that you want that server to play. So you may not want to have, if you decide that you want to do your own email, then you may want to have that on a separate server. And so putting it in the cloud is, sometimes a better option than having it local. But so it also depends on, like Donna said, when you're speccing out that server, what roles do you want that server to play? What functionality do you want it to serve?
Well, yeah, and that's another point is when you're dealing with servers, sometimes one is enough, but often you need more than one. And sometimes people will do overkill. You know, I think I mentioned before, there's 5 servers with 3 employees.
Yeah.
That's just wrong. But on the flip side of that, you can't have one server with 30 or 40 employees most of the time. Now, there's some scenarios. It depends on what you're doing. But, you know, again, fact-based.
I just this week had a client that I just picked them up. And the previous IT company put a server in to handle their mail, a mail server, not female server, a mail server. And they had 4 user accounts. That's it, 4 email accounts. And so I said, so what else are you doing other than your email? And they're like, nothing. I'm like, you doing like shared calendars, anything like that? No. Just email. Or do you need anything like crazy cool that you're doing? No, just send and receive email. I'm like, why do you need a server for that?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's another thing you got to watch out for on getting it on your own. You may, you need to make sure that whoever's getting them for you actually understands speccing what you need as well as what you may need in the future based on your current business plans and not just speccing what they know.
Or what you ask for. You walk in the door and you go, I need a mail server. you might get a mail server. Even though you don't need it.
Yeah. So, yeah, you want to make sure you're dealing with somebody. And doing it yourself is challenging, even for us. So, I absolutely hate doing it. That's why I don't do it anymore. But other people love it, you know, and that's part of it. But with the cloud server, you get a certain amount of that help in knowing what you need too, because I'm like, I thought I needed more. I was going to have to pay a whole lot more. I thought I was going to have to switch over. And the guy goes, no, we can just do this. I'm loving that. You do that then. But it's you are paying every month. But again, you're paying for what you use and what you need. You have to have adequate connectivity in your office. It's not like you don't have any fees in your office once you do that, because you got to keep all the other stuff going.
Yeah, and you still have to monitor and manage the internal network stuff, the workstations. I mean, I've heard this before, and I'm sure you have too. We've got all of our stuff in the cloud, so we don't need IT. I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way.
You still need security. You need security. I don't care what it is. And that's why a lot of folks that have always been IT providers are now managed security providers, because you still have to have the security part.
Yeah. Oh, we got antivirus.
Yeah. Whatever came, we bought it on every one of these when we bought them.
Yep.
Really? Okay. So, but you're still doing, we just talked about OCR making it clear that cloud providers can't do I don't touch the data, you control the data. And that goes for both data centers and cloud servers, that you are dealing with a business associate. So you have to make sure before you pick one that they are willing to meet those obligations.
Yeah. And if you're dealing with an MSP or an IT provider, and you call them and you say, hey, I want to, talk to you about a server, and they decide that they're going to choose one of these paths for you, you kind of need to know that. You need to know which way they're going to go with that. Because, me as an IT provider, there are pros and cons for the way I decide to deal with these people for my clients. And I've kind of become the middleman, the tier 1 support, so to speak. And I set it up, make sure it runs. And if there's a problem, the client doesn't have to deal with the cloud provider or the data center or whatever. I do that. So it gives the client the ability to kind of be completely hands off at that point, because I'm doing everything. But, like Donna said, the cool thing about the cloud provider and in some data centers, is that you have other levels of support. So if I'm a IT provider and I'm selling you a cloud server, then not only do you get my support, but I have other people backing me, other engineers and people that are working on stuff. So even if it's just somebody who's running a small IT shop, they could have, dozens and dozens of engineers and everything else that they have access to work on your stuff.
Yeah. But the vetting thing is very, very important. because without going into specific details, back to I try not to talk about these things. I am aware of a situation where it was a small regional data center, which you have used that yourself, before you moved to Liquid Web. You were using a smaller local data center, weren't you?
Yeah, it was for websites. Yeah.
Yeah. But still, I mean, this is what we're talking about. And so this data center was doing, they got a great deal for the local community to host their EHR. And it was great. And everything worked fine until the data center, the hosting company got hit with ransomware and it spread everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the details behind that. But even worse is before they could get all of that resolved, because this is a small company and all of your eggs are in that basket when you're using them for everything. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a co-location. So they didn't have a hot swap backup where the co-location means I have a complete duplicate of everything in another site. Mm-hmm. And I can always rebuild this on one of my other data centers. So there's multiple data centers out around the country or the world. And so they didn't have that because that was one of the ways that they were able to, make it really cost effective for the local community. And then the owner was killed in a car accident in the midst of the ransomware attack.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And so it's been a very big mess. And a lot of people are struggling and having to deal with things. So that's some of the stuff you have to put into, take into account when you're vetting these folks is, how easy will it be for you to adapt? Because we just started this episode talking about that the hosting company got hit with a brute force attack and ransomware. Mm-hmm. So the cloud hosting server management. Now, so I don't know exactly the services. Again, it's not very clear, but we've just now looped completely back around to say it can happen anywhere. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. So,
lot to think about.
Perfect loop.
So I hope we gave everybody something to think about and chew on. And so that, as you saw, there's definitely not a right or wrong, or one's so much better than the other. And, it's a business decision, as we say often to people. It's just a business decision. Weigh your options. Weigh your options.
Fact specific determination.
Right. So anyway, that's our show for today, folks. I want to thank you for listening. You can also head over to our website if you're not already there, helpmewithhipaa.com. You can leave a question right there on the podcast page, and we may feature it in a future episode because we're getting a lot of those lately. You can review us on iTunes. We appreciate those. Hadn't had one in a while, even though our listener base is going through the roof. So apparently people don't listen on iTunes.
We forget to ask them at the beginning. We don't ask them until the end. And everybody, by this point, everybody's like, oh, I already know what they're saying now.
That might be the case. We're also on Stitcher, and you can also find us on social media. So for Donna and myself, remember, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.